I'm Greg Kaminski,
I'm Sheri Guess.
and here with us today is CIS instructor Juan Maldonado. And our
Hi.
focus for this session is on effective strategies for teaching the course materials, the content. So Juan, to start out, it'd be great if you could share a few key strategies or approaches you like to use for integrating instructional materials, tools, or activities that engage students.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to do that. So just a little bit of background about myself. I teach in the Computer Information Systems department here at PCC. Before I design a class, what I sit down and do is sort of identify a few key things. Number one, and we're talking about user experience design here, I think about who my audience is. And of course, my audience is students, and generally, these are going to be students in distance learning modalities. So the key thing there is to provide clarity to students so that on a week-by-week basis, they really understand what it is that they need to do and what is expected of them as students. There's another aspect to it, and that is the aspect of the format. You're the person designing it, so you fully understand all the concepts and all of the requests that you're giving to students. But students aren't familiar with that. They're seeing things for the first time also. So there's that gap also that I think really needs to be filled. In terms of the knowledge that you're going to give students, you can be very rigorous with that. And you can be enthusiastic about that. You can share this, this knowledge with students. But the actual sort of guts of everything, right? Like how your assignments are structured, how they're graded, how they're presented. I feel that if instructors put quite a little bit of work into that, providing consistency and keeping things super, super easy, and the students will have not that much to worry about in terms of that because they sort of understand every single week what it's expected of them and where they could find things. Because I think a lot of times our students, maybe they're not really failing on the materials, they're just sort of failing to understand what they need to do and where to find the stuff that they need.
Well, speaking more along those lines, Juan, can you give us an example about how you direct students in their learning?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Here's what I'm talking about in regards to consistency. And you guys are very well aware of the way that you would structure lectures or lessons, right? You start off by telling folks what they're going to learn that day. So you do that in the first 5 minutes, you intro it. Then in the middle of it, you actually teach them what it is that you're going to teach them. And then at the end, you tell them again what they learned, and then you open things up for questions. So I've kind of modeled that a little bit in the way that I structure things. I start off by just giving a short little page that talks about what you're going to learn in this module. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then this is great for students because this sets expectations immediately. Students are being told immediately at the end of this module, students will be able to, and then there's a list. Is we're really setting students up for, this is the expectation, this is what you're going to learn, and this is what you'll be able to do by the end. If you can do this, you are successful. So we're establishing what success looks like in this module.
You've supplied a roadmap here of what students are going to learn.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And another thing that I've done is every single time I lecture on a certain topic, I don't like to put them into the same document. The nice thing about Desire to Learn is you can always create another page. So what I do is I take sort of the largest topics, and this is really good because this sort of helps me break things down a little bit. And it's also really good for students to be able to refer back to these things. So
great. That really emphasizes the need for clarity in the names and the naming system that you have used throughout the course, I'm sure.
Yes, I even have named these because sometimes I don't know where videos are. I'll actually include where I've put videos in here in the title. So that, again, it keeps with the whole consistency aspect of things.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you've seen student engagement increase?
I'm actually going to share an anecdote from high school. So I was blessed for 3 years of high school to have literally one of the best and celebrated math teachers in the state of California. His name was Larry Cantrell, great guy, the late Larry Cantrell. I was heartbroken when he passed away. But he won the Jaime Escalante Award for teaching excellence in the state of California. And I remember one day we were in his Algebra 2 class and we were doing quadratic equations. You're picturing these, right? Like x plus 2 times x minus 3, that kind of thing, right? And then we had to do the thing, and then we had to do the chart. And he's up there lecturing about it. He's giving it his all. And then finally, I remember this, a student, and she raised her hand and she's like, Mr. Cantrell, I don't want you to take offense at this, but why do we do quadratic equations? And he could have taken that question wrong. He could have been like, what's the point of this, or something like that. So she wasn't questioning it. She was literally asking questions. She just said, what is the practical application of the quadratic equation? And he said, oh, okay, well, as we're doing the graph, as you can see, it's sort of shaped like this. He said that shape is called a parabola. And these are math equations that are used to do things like calculate the trajectory of rockets or satellites, or, if you're in the military and you want to, shell a position or something like that. All of this information comes together and it traces a path of something over space. And now, I don't think any student in that class is a rocket scientist, but as soon as he provided context and said, this is the real life application for the thing that we are doing in this class right now, for this thing that you're spending hours on and it's causing you nightmares, as soon as we understood that there was a point to this and it did a thing, everybody went, oh. And at that point, there was more buy-in. At that, it was like a light went on in that class. And I think we started to feel a little bit better about what it was that we were doing. Finally, there was a point to a thing other than torture, and we had to do it. This has real life implementation. So again, he gave us context, and at that point we were all in. And all it took was a couple of minutes of explaining the shape of a parabola. As soon as students understand that there's a point to it, again, context, they understand the reason for something, the learning really happens. And when students feel empowered within that structure to sort of provide answers and sort of provide their own ideas of things and sort of their own perspective, I've seen students really blossom in that.
Great. And I imagine it's a much more rewarding experience for you as the instructor to see these connections being made.
Absolutely. When I grade these assignments, they're structured in such a way that it's easier for me too, because if there's a structure, then I sort of understand where I need to look to see if a student did their learnings. It's a little work at the outset. Admittedly, it is a little bit of work, to make instructional materials that are extremely clear, but it pays off in dividends. It really does.
Are you finding that in your teaching that you're also teaching students how to approach learning or how to think differently about learning?
Oh, yes, absolutely. One of the things that I do for students to sort of help them become aware of how they're experiencing the process is something that I do with all of my assignment drop boxes. Let me share my screen real fast and I will show you what that looks like. When a student turns in files in the Dropbox, there is a comments field. And what I ask students to provide me with is just give me a little bit of feedback about your experience that happened. What was easy? What was difficult or confusing? And I find so much benefit in these because as I'm grading the assignments, students will tell me immediately, I sort of had some anxiety about the second question that I was answering. I sort of feel like maybe I didn't answer that question correctly, or maybe I sort of felt like I didn't get quite enough information for that. So students are literally telling me in here in the comments, not in the assignment, but in the comments, they're letting me know Number one, yeah, I mean, the brass tacks things of I was confused about this, I was confused about XYZ. But also, I really like to hear from students about how they're feeling about the things. Do they feel like, oh my goodness, this is something new and this is really exciting. I'm really kind of liking this. Or, students are letting me know, hey, I'm kind of struggling on this a little bit. It feels a little difficult. Can you give me some feedback or something like that? And I will often respond to the comments the students are doing in my feedback for the assignments. So literally, it's as easy as asking students, well, how was this week? How was it? So a lot of this learning is siloed, right? I mean, they're doing the work on their own. So, getting feedback from students about their experience, you'd be surprised what they tell you. But also, I mean, getting that instant feedback from students about their experiences, it has helped me. I've had students sort of complain about some assignments. It's one thing if 2 students complain. It's something if 10 students say, I was kind of having trouble with it. Then, there's a pattern and maybe it's something that really does need to be fixed. So yeah, to answer your question, I just ask students.
That's great.
Ask them how they're feeling. Thank you for
you.
asking that, by the way. I completely forgot about that. And it's a really important aspect of things. And it makes students feel empowered. Because they're like, oh, here's someone who actually wants to know how I was feeling about this thing that I did this week. Cool,
Right.
Here you go.
Right.
So I want to thank you for being here today and for enlightening us with all this information about assumptions about student knowledge, about being careful of that, gaps that we have to consider, modeling personas, so many different things that you've shared with us today. Really appreciate that.
Oh, it's no problem. I love talking about this stuff. If I wasn't teaching students, I think I'd like to teach teachers. I think that'd be fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheri. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.